the East African, which was carrying this. Uhuru Raila in unity pledge ahead of U.S. Secretary visit. Of course, this has been overtaken by event, but this is the edition of East African this week. So what does it portend for this country? We've been talking a good game about, dialogue, about unity. We've been talking a good game about, of course, issues to do with security and how they were not really seeing eye to eye as far as unity is concerned. So we want to cross over to our panelists to continue weighing in on matter security. We have with us this morning Professor Naomi Damba, who's the Vice Chancellor of KCA University, also an expert on defense and foreign policy. Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a conflict and resolution expert. Also do have with us Rungu Houghton, who's the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. Also Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who's the Director of the Horn Institute. And we have Dr. Werunga Simiyu, who's the CEO of African Security Center and, of course, Strategic Center. We continue apace with that discussion. Let's hear from Dr. Werunga. Were you happy? Were you happy to hear Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta joining forces right now?
Let me speak in. I want to speak at two levels. One as a Kenyan, and if you allow me, second as a person from western part of Kenya. You'll allow me?
Yes.
Thank you. As a Kenyan, notwithstanding the politics surrounding this unity pledge, I think it's a good thing for this country. Of course, we have politicians who have their own vested interests, but we also know that in this country, like I say, I don't like talking politics, but let me speak today. In this country, we've never come across a politician who has stood firm on their principles so that they can make some of us who never like indulging in politics feel that for sure this is a person who can never change. This country has a history of politicians jumping ship from time to time. Honorable Raila has a steady history, you know it. But I think even as people say that he has this habit of jumping from place to place,
yes,
people never look the other side of the coin why he jumps. We think, my view, and let me speak for the first time on politics, my view, and I could be wrong, I think is a man who is wronged more than the rest of these fellows who are making noise. If you want me to explain, I'll explain to my understanding. I think he's a man who carries a vision that many Kenyans believe in. He's a man who has been around, and many Kenyans feel he's been talking what they want to talk. But most of the times, I think he enters into some political marriages that most of the times never materialize. Whether he demands too much, or he expects too much from his colleagues, or his colleagues expect too much from him, or they become chickenry in how they deal with him, that is besides the point. But I think for this country, notwithstanding what the hulabala we are hearing in the political scene, I think this unity thing is good for this country. We know President Uhuru is going home after these 5 years, and Raila might be going home after these 5 years. Now, I've not spoken the second bit of it, but I'll speak later.
We are finishing now because we've been talking a good game since Monday about this particular truce. So I don't want us to belabor the points, until we see how the dialogue will actually ensue from here. So there's nothing much. I think
as I finish quickly, then I think most of these other people in NASA are jumping the ship. Let's get to understand what is this truce all about. Let everything come out. We know what it is. Then we can start saying what we want to say.
All right. Okay. Aspect of security. Yeah,
it's good for the country.
Yeah, it's good for the country.
It's good for the country.
Dr. Kanenje. Yeah. Let's just remain apolitical on this.
Okay.
Yes.
Dibal, anytime our leaders meet and they're talking about country instead of increasing their salary, it's a good day for Kenya. It will be pretentious for us to assume everything has been okay in this country. This election was rather unusual. And I think any keen observer knows that, even those who are not keen enough, they actually know that. And I've heard, some aspersions, people casting aspersions against the so-called deal or so-called pact. We don't even know whether it's actually a pact. But what is important is visually, it's a good message, not just to, in terms of uniting Kenyans, but actually how the rest of the world looks at the country. That clip right there of them shaking hands was covered virtually by every respectable media in the world, in part because Kenya is important, Kenya is significant. And so that meeting alone actually is a positive, is a step in the positive direction, and we shouldn't vilify them for doing that. We do not know what is contained in there, and we don't even know whether it's going to last. What we know is it's a good thing, and Kenyans should at least try to understand and appreciate and support them in the process of building national cohesion and reconciliation.
Irongo Houghton, very briefly.
I think the handshake that we saw on Friday was essentially a ceasefire. Now, all historians know that ceasefires are temporary if they're not backed up by some clear steps to deal with the structural and the political problems that gave rise to the conflict to start with. We know for a fact that the two gentlemen who were shaking hands escalated the violence that we saw, the violence and the acrimony that we saw last year. So this is a great moment, and we need to congratulate them for taking that step. I think what the next question is to make sure this doesn't lead to a grand confusion opportunity. In 2008, we created the Grand Coalition. The potential now for grand confusion, I think, is great. The danger is that we may have weakened the opposition. So I think the opposition needs to think very clearly about how do they play their role as a loyal opposition, less violent, less inflammatory, and more working more closely within the rule of law. I think also for the for Jubilee, they need to think about how do they deal with the problems that we saw. And I think if there's just one idea that I would like to give to the Mwangi Kimani Secretariat, it would be the idea of a judicial commission of inquiry into security sector reform, and in particular into extrajudicial killings. I think that would be a clear statement that we are willing to go to the point at which we would not have the kind of tension that we saw last year.
Okay, all right.
Dibal, the handshakes were very good for the country. In terms of national security, it reduced the tensions that was there in the country. It was a good way to de-escalate the conflict that had already reached the hearting stalemate between the two major protagonists, and the country was hurting. Now, I think we said before in this program that what is illegitimate and illegal do not last long. The national resistance movement is one thing that we said was illegitimate, was illegal, and was not bound to last long. The last point here, Dibal, and I want to emphasize on this, is that if the handshake is not going now to translate into meaningful issues and a movement that addresses mainly the agenda number 4 that came out of the 2008 National Accords, then we will have much more difficulties in 2022. I did say before, Dibal, written severally, that 2022 will be a watershed moment for Kenya, make or break. And the ceasefire that has been announced is something that now Kenyans should take advantage of and fall behind the two leaders to address the issues that are really bedeviling this country.
Right, Nomi Damba.
Dubal, one Kenya who's sitting here this morning and say that I'm so proud to watch this happen because a while ago I called for these two people to meet, these two honorable people to meet without the advisors. And it happened, and so many Kenyans, religious people, diplomats called for the same thing, and it has now happened. This country has been hurting for a long time, what we call externalities, which is image that we have overseas, was suffering, and the ordinary person is suffering. The Bangladesh defined leadership as an ability to mobilize people to create extraordinary outcome. And these two gentlemen shaking hands, and if you ever shake the hands of Uhuru Kenyatta, you move yours to a point where you think your shoulder is going to split. And this was important that he did this together with Raila. It's good for the country, it's good for the people. And so what is left now is for those people who are electioneering for 2022 to do something else with their life. Omigo Magara is now a farmer. I think these people need to be farmers and do something else, produce food instead. There's too much noise that we don't need. And all the dog catchers, everybody who's going to run for 2022, begin January 1, 2021, so that we can have a room enough to be able to develop this country, for the students to get money to go to the university, for ordinary people to get meaningful job in order to feed their family, for us to move ahead as a country. This is what we need. We don't need no more politics.